you know.
Well, but that's the way it was, I mean,
I just told
that's the way
Tara
it used to be. I don't know what it
that
was with the
switch.
company you worked
Joplin
for.
back.
Telephone company.
Did you get the Joplin back?
For them, you know, your whole career.
It's an interesting story.
That's not.
I can imagine.
Kevin?
So I got,
people who
you
are
called
really
me out
good
a couple hours
want to
down the
get
road.
ahead.
Yep.
So you called me and I'm like,
You know,
okay,
that upward
let me see if I can get
mobility is
Darla
limited,
to go.
okay?
So I
And
call
so
her,
people that are good,
there, she's
they
at my
don't
son's
mind
house,
going out and
up
changing
in,
jobs.
outside
So
of
they
Arnold.
keep their resumes.
You know, so I tell her what the
updated.
scoop is and everything.
You know, when they're ready to go.
So
Yeah.
she
you know,
gets on the
so
phone to try to
I
see if
wasn't
she
that
can,
way.
and she
We never
is
had to be that way.
this
I mean,
honest,
but hell,
honest,
how long have you been
honest.
retired now?
I said, well, so
20,
she
22
did,
years.
no.
Mine's right
So
around
after all of a
30
sudden
years,
I get her going.
And I've been retired
I
almost
think,
30
wait a
years.
second,
So, yeah.
wait a second.
Well,
Why don't
one
I
thing
see
I
if
hear
I
from
can't get
a
it
few
tomorrow in
people that
Osage
she'll
Beach?
communicate with.
That way, when I get my second shot,
Well, you're
I
shot.
don't have to go to Cape Girardeau.
Absolutely no.
Yeah.
Or not Cape Girardeau, excuse me, Joplin.
Yeah.
Much shorter drive. So I call her, you know, I call her to call her to call her. So finally I get through to her and I said, hey,
And
she can get me signed up at Hy-Vee
They just
tomorrow.
weren't treating their employees.
You know, we can do it
Taking away
anytime after
benefits
3
and
o'clock or
cutting
whatever.
back on
And see if you can get me
salaries.
signed up at Hy-Vee tomorrow. That way I don't have to, that way my second
I
shot
don't
will be
have-
here
you know,
in town
I know what
rather
it
than
was
driving
like,
all the way to
you know, when I
Joplin.
was with the
So
company.
that works.
It used to be
You came
great.
back here and got
It
your
used to be
shot?
great.
Companies
And
used to take care of
Not
their
Tuesday.
employees.
Right.
And the
Well, we were
company
coming home
started
Wednesday
giving us
anyway.
counters.
Then,
And only cared about
then
one
what
thing,
goes
that was the
next
bottom
is,
line.
Exactly
Uh,
what
They kept
happened.
saying,
I
the most
stop,
important
wait till I
asset
get the
we've got
email from
is our
Hy-Vee confirming
employees.
everything, because I'm like,
And yet,
you know, I can see me coming up empty
Oh,
handed.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. You're in limbo here possibly.
So all of a sudden I get the confirmation from
number
Hy-Vee, it's like,
crunchers,
okay, good, so I turn
boy,
around,
the
come back, I drive for about
bonuses
half hour,
started
45 minutes, I have to
getting
stop and get some
whittled
gas.
Right.
While
Well,
I'm there, I
except
get
for
another
the
phone
top.
call from Ozark Clinic.
yeah. Right in the middle of
I
town,
haven't
so
had
it'd
my
be more
first
for them
shot
at
or
the
my
top.
second shot.
Yeah,
I said,
that's what it was.
no, I said, I haven't had a shot
At
with
the
you.
hospital clinic or?
No, the one up there.
behind Hy-Vee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I said,
Central
well, I'm
Ozark.
getting mine tomorrow at Hy-Vee. Okay, well, we'll take you off our list.
It's been crazy.
So I could have gotten 3 all of a sudden, you know, I've been trying to get one, and the next thing you know, boom, boom, boom.
Dave and Dorothy got theirs over there. They were able to get theirs.
Hy-Vee,
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, Dave and Dorothy got theirs.
that was their first.
That was their first. They hadn't been called yet.
Well,
You know, Dave's 82 years old, still haven't been called.
Linda Craig wasn't called yet either.
Is that
I
right?
told her about Hy-Vee.
I talked to the nurse about it. I said, hey, I got a little problem I'm concerned about. I said, when I get my second shot, like a day later, I'm planning to go out of town. She says, no, that's
10
not a good
days.
idea. And she says, you know, you shouldn't do that, can I said, okay. She says, we give you when you're supposed to get your next shot. You can get it 4 days early without a problem, and you can get it 21 days later without a problem. I
Right.
said, well, I would like you to, she says, give us a call.
Why did she not want you to go out of town?
Well, only,
Because of the reaction to the shot?
just don't know.
Because of the reaction to the shot?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't want to get the shot one day and go out of town the next day.
Right.
We need to plan that day very lightly.
Okay. So right now, it's gonna be at least 2 days, but I'm gonna try to get it. even
All right.
more.
Well, Bob's got her.
Thank you, Richard.
You bet.
Well, good evening. Let's go ahead and get this thing started. I now call to order the February 25th, 2021 Special Board of Aldermen meeting. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Walker.
Here,
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Morose.
Here.
Alderman Becker. Alderman Osteen. Mayor Overy.
Here. All right, we have we do, by the way, have a quorum, so we're ready to roll. We only have one item of new business, and that's the discussion of street light standards. So our friends from Cochrane are here to share some information with us, and we appreciate it very much. Thank you for your time this evening.
Okay. So just to introduce, I brought Gary Scheipeter with me tonight. Gary is our head street lighting design expert. real quick on his background, Gary used to work for the city of Clayton for, what was it, 45 years? As the public works superintendent, and he maintained street lighting systems and designed them there for 45 years. About 15 years ago, I hired him to work for me, because I used to work in Clayton too, so I knew Gary. So I have had Gary designing street lighting systems for cities for the last 10+ years. And probably Gary's designed at least 30+ projects, street lighting projects. So Gary's my guy, he's my go-to guy. When I got a question, I ask Gary, and Gary gives me the answer. So that's why we got Gary tonight. So before we dive into the weeds, because I think that's where we're heading, let's, what I did is I tried to put together a little bit of information for everybody just to kind of get us on the same page here. So what I did is I requested your Amaranth bills from Angel and kind of looked at them. I just want to bring everybody here up to speed on what you're paying and what's going on. So the first bill is at KK. You have 5 post-top lights. So that's HPS, high pressure sodium. That's the yellow light. That's what that stands for, HPS.
Before we go any farther, if you guys can't see, if you all want to move around, okay, all right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Is there possibly a way to dim the lights over in front of that screen, maybe?
And what I'm trying to show you is, do I got to point on this, Gina?
Oh, that's better, yeah.
Anyway, here's the street light, and what this is, it's a fiberglass pole, nothing decorative, post top, it's an Amaranth light. Amaranth has, I think, 5 lights you can choose from. This would be one of them. They're about like this, they're very basic. So you guys are paying $22.87 a month per pole, per light on this, and there's 5 of them. It's one of your bills on a KK. I don't know how long that's been there. I don't have any idea. It doesn't really matter. So that's one of your bills. Another bill that you have are your City Hall lights. Again, these, I don't know do you maintain these or does Amber?
I don't know.
Does anybody know who owns them? So you're paying for those 18 lights, that's MV, that's mercury vapor. Yes. Okay, so that's, you know what that light looks like. It's a little more white. You're paying $11.69 per month for those poles. That's what you're paying for. The Parkway lighting, there's 250 of them. Those are high pressure sodium again. You're familiar with those. You're paying $6.29 per month for those. And what it says on the bill is energy and maintenance. So I don't know if you own the poles, but you're paying $6.29 per month per pole for energy and maintenance.
We own the poles, Cameron changes the bulbs. No, they own some portion of the maintenance, I'm trying to remember the bulb, but not the ballast or something like that.
And that makes sense, that really does make sense, with the number of $6.29 a month. Because when Gary and I saw it, we're like, man, that's really cheap. If you're paying $6.29 a month to rent a pole, that's not normal. The one you saw first at KK for the $22, that's more normal when Ameren rents the lights.
So do they own the pole?
I think you get, I don't know, do you think you own the pole?
These? I think we own the poles, but somehow in the agreement, when we put them all the way down the park, we bought them all. And we of course, we had to pay electricity, but Ameren has some form of the maintenance, because I'm trying to, it's almost like we do the bulbs and they do the ballast or something to that effect.
Was it MoDOT's lighting first when you guys took it over?
No,
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
That was the city of Kermit, it was a big
Right,
project to
right,
light the park.
right.
To light 54 at that time.
Right,
To light 54, so to light, okay, so some.
to put them up.
So
I
that,
think we own the pole because I know when we've had some vehicle wrecks, it's been on us to get it taken
Yes,
care of.
it is. We own the pole.
Yeah,
And maybe
Makes
we own the
sense.
pole and everything, but they have some, I know they do some of the maintenance. But it's not, it depends on what's wrong as to whether or not we have to do it or whether they do it.
right.
and the reason you probably know it's your pole, because if it was an Ameren pole, it would look like an Ameren pole, it would look like one we're used to seeing, that's not a typical Ameren pole, so that makes sense. There's 250 of those, so it is a lot, you have a lot. Okay, so on Nichols Road, this is a newer project, you have 29 lights, you own these lights for sure, and what you're paying, your bill on the 29 lights is $20.55 per month. So what that equals is $7.47 each you're paying for power, for just energy. That's a metered system, and you're paying $7.40 per each. It's just information to know. It's your pole, you own it, you're just paying a meter. You're not paying per anything. So if the lights were turned off, you wouldn't pay Ameren anything. So that's city-owned. Another city-owned is your Passover Road project, and again, the last ones you saw, just to kind of show you real quick, more decorative. You can see kind of the base down here is decorative. You can see the post top just more decorative. The next one looks to me like an Ameren light, but it is city-owned, not as decorative, but it's still more decorative than the first one you saw. Now, what's interesting about this is just look at the numbers here real quick. On Passover Road, you got 65 lights, and you can see you're paying $3.10 each per light for your energy on these. Let's go back real quick. On these, you're paying $7.40 each for energy. Gary, why is that?
Well, a couple things. We kind of.
Real quick too. You see that 11 cents per kilowatt hour? That's what they're charging you per kilowatt hour, 11 cents. Let's go to the other ones. Now, here's the deal. They're charging you 5 cents per kilowatt hour. Just something that we noticed on your bills.
We just, Dave and I talked about that. I mean, when we looked at your bills, and on the different bills, there's different line items as far as taxes for Camden County on some of the bills, but not all of them. And that can reflect on the price. And the other thing too is the time frame of when those other lights were put in, if there were some agreements for reduced energy or anything between the city and Ameren. I mean, it's obviously, yeah, that's helpful.
It's a question that you might want to, when we're looking at the bills, you're paying 11 cents per kilowatt hour on one project. Now, it's got nothing to do with the lights if you think about it. What's that got to do with the lights? You're paying 11 cents per kilowatt hour on one deal, and on the other one, you're paying 5 cents. And I'll just leave it at that for right now. But just so you know, that's kind of weird. I mean, why aren't you paying 5 cents per kilowatt hour on both of them? I don't know. It's something. Here's your Mace Road. There's actually 4 lights. When I looked at this, I thought there was 5. There's actually 4. Now on this one, you're paying 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's on the bill. It's a question, I don't know if you want
Well,
to.
I don't know the details and I wrote it down, but I do remember, and this is previous city engineer, when they would negotiate utility work or negotiate right-of-way, there could very well be that in each individual project. So there very well could have been a give or take in something, because if they needed to move something or we needed to move something. So I'm going to look on those 2 projects, but I think David's right. There's probably something very specific with that project that there was I hate to say a trade, but where we got a discount on a rate if there was something with the utilities, if we helped them do that or something. So I can remember Nick and I discussing those things, but those projects are a few years old now, so I would have to go back to the details.
Yeah, I'm just looking at your current usage per bill, and I'm just taking what you pay per bill and dividing it into. It's all I'm doing to get that number. It's just something to look at.
Something else that could impact that, Ameren, what they do is they can give the agency a reduced energy rate if you dedicate that light system strictly for roadway light. Now, if you tap that meter off for anything else, then you will not get that reduced rate. In this case or another case, I mean, that's a possibility. I'm just trying to figure out if there was other circumstances why these numbers were so inflated in relation to that first one.
Yeah, you only have 8 bills here, I think, 7 or 8 bills, so it's not like it's a big deal. I think it's just something that somebody at the city could talk to Ameren and just ask the question. It's just something that kind of jumped off. So anyway, just so you know, that's your street lighting system. That's your current street lighting system for the city of Osage. That's what you're paying for. Those are the lights. That's it. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because I drive around town and I see other Cobra heads hanging off here or there, but I asked the question a couple times, this is all you're paying for. This is it. So If you got lights other places, you're not paying for them.
We got a free ride on a
So let's
thousand
stop.
lights, is what it sounds
Well,
like, based
well, I
on what
don't-
you just said.
We had talked about that, you know, Dave and I did, and it's like, well, does the city want to poke the cap on this? Because, I mean, you could be, and maybe with Amaranth and Osage Beach being the lake and the power energy grid and the whole 9 yards, this would come into play also. We're just putting bullet points out there to see why there's such variance
Yeah, here's your,
on energy.
I asked the question a couple times, I mean, Gina knows it, I'm asking, this is it, this is what you guys, this is, you know, so your yearly fee, let's just say is about you're paying about $70,000 to Ameren per year for your lighting system.
The city hall, that seems to stand out. That can't just represent the lights that you showed us at the city hall parking lot.
It is.
$3,700 a month, that's a year.
Yeah, no, that's a month. That's a month.
Yeah, that's a
It's
month.
18.
A bunch of them, so, for example.
That's gotta be more than just lighting. That's gotta be for, you know, our other power demands.
No, it's not.
It's
It
not?
says it right there, it's your street lighting.
My
It's-
instinct is, let's take Harbor Heights, okay?
Right.
We put in like, Cecil
Paying
Payne,
for those lights, right?
I think was his name, he was before he retired. We put in the contemporary lighting, if you see this brochure that I've got, and I don't know if they've got it or not.
Doesn't show.
But we turned it over to the city, okay? And I think there's probably, I'm gonna guess there's about 20 of those down there, okay? I know that the association, because I'm the secretary, is not getting the bill for them, okay? The city's getting the bill. My gut feeling is they're the ones that say City Hall.
That's the point I was trying to make.
So your bill specifically says 18 mercury vapor and 3, it says 21 mercury vapor. That's
Right.
what you're paying for, 21 mercury vapor. So you're paying these lights right here, it's gotta be another bill from Ameren.
$70 a fixture.
No, it's gotta be capped.
It's-
It's gotta.
It's gotta be covering
Mary, you're
something
right.
else.
Got some other electric.
I would agree to where you would, something else is off that system, off your meter there. And that's where, like we were saying before, is that could be where Ameren thinks that you're tapping off of those other meters, other than just street lighting. That's, you know.
Or they've just accumulated them and built them that way. And I think that's probably, right,
In
right.
that lane, we
And-
added, Nick added like 3 or 4 down there, that's up at the top of Harbor Heights. They rebuilt those houses in the last 10 or 12 years. When I first got in, I worked with Nick, there was no streetlights there, we got it put in, and I'm sure that, you know, there's 4 or 5 lights that got put in, they probably just went to the city hall.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Okay.
So that's another question that we
Yeah.
need to know on your bill.
Right.
So, okay, so,
And Ameren has been known to.
Yeah, to check.
Billings, you know, been dealing with these billings, and we used to track, when I worked for the city of Clayton, we used to track these, and we had a stack of about 75 bills for each meter had a separate bill. So
Right.
Going back through and trying to figure, in many cases, there were bookkeeping issues.
that could be fixed, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
something to really dive into. Okay, so that's your street lighting system. So what I wanted to show here before we get into our discussion is that when this discussion started, I guess about 6 months ago, the question on the table was, you guys have your current your street lighting guidelines and standards. So basically, I had Gary take a look at it, and we made recommendations, and this is, I don't know if you have that with you anymore, we redlined it.
Right.
Gina passed out a while ago, you got that? And I guess the long and short of it is that your current, on your residential and local streets, you guys had a max 400 feet, Gary recommended 200 minimum, max 250. On your non-residential collector, instead of 300 max, 150 min, 200 max, also lights at the intersections. And then going from high pressure sodium to LEDs. And that's really summarizing what this guideline here says. So that's that's and you guys have never taken any action on that document. I think when I talked to you about that, when I did a few months ago, I think we just put it to the side and said we're gonna talk about it later. So here we are talking about it later. That's really all I brought with me to show you, to kind of get the ball rolling here, to start talking about what we need to do.
Back up if you would.
Sure.
Now, where does Mace Road fit in there?
Okay, so Mace Road, the only bill I got was for your 4 light roundabout. this phase two, I didn't get that bill.
Well, I'm not worried about Billy, I'm worried about spacing and all that kind of stuff. Where does Mace Road fit in there? Because I have visually realized what the lighting is there, okay? That's just the way I deal with stuff. So I'm trying to figure out what is the spacing, and what is the power of the lighting there as it relates to what you're talking about.
The spacing is a lot less than 150 feet. I know that, I drove it today. A lot less. I'm gonna guess 50 to 70. I don't know and it's easy to look at specs, I don't have them in front of me. I'm guessing, are they LEDs? Do you know if they're even LEDs?
I'm pretty sure they're LEDs.
They're LEDs. Is it
We own-
bright? Is it bright when you drive down through there or not?
I believe it's brighter than the parkway.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's
see that,
way too
Kevin?
many lights down there. There's way too many lights down there.
$6,000 a pole.
Yeah, there's too many lights down there.
So I can just tell you, and I'm just gonna be totally frank with you, if we designed that project, Gary did it, it would not look like that, because one of the things I knew many, many years ago is, and I was telling Mike earlier, when you do a street lighting project, you don't wanna have too many, and you don't wanna have not enough. And that's where you get someone who's been doing it forever to try to get you in that right spot. And in my opinion, just looking at it without seeing it at night, it looks like there's too many lights. It's just, I mean, that's what
Call
it is.
balls and strikes down there.
That's what it is. It's too many. So, and then the other issue you have.
Matt will be putting a
was you have all
softball
those lights
stadium
on
down
phase
there.
two. You have all those lights on phase two, and then there's a gap before you get down to the roundabout.
Oh, yeah.
So it's gonna really jump out at you, like, man, and we have all these lights, now we don't have them, so.
It's bright, dark, and bright again.
But
But,
the gap is being fixed in the next project.
right.
Yeah, gap was a
Gap's
mistake.
being addressed, it's
Right.
just not done yet.
Yeah, there's just a lot of
What-
parameters that go, like they said, every system or every improvement project that is done, I mean, there's criteria you have to go with hydrant, street. Do we have sidewalks both sides, sidewalks on one side, the average, daily transportation numbers, what are you trying to achieve? You have to also look at the canopies, your tree canopies, will affect your light distribution. You know, there's just a lot of parameters that go, you know, into designing the system, so.
Now, your guidelines here too, this is specific to a developer coming in and being Amaranth lights, and then you will rent the lights from them. That's what this is all about, that's what you're showing right now. This is not, your guidelines are not for city-owned street lighting system. This is if a developer comes in and wants to know what they're supposed to do, we wanna see a street lighting system, Amaranth lights that have, and Gary's got them in their LED and what they are, and here's the minimum maximum spacing, you need to meet that. That's a developer, that's not, you know, Mace Road, that's not, in other words, if we're gonna put lights on Industrial Drive, we would look at it from a different, we would not start with this right here. We would look at what we're trying to achieve and go from
Well,
there.
being as we have Mace Road that we are 3/4 the way through, Gary, how do you, what would you suggest doing there? Because if you go from where we are to this, is it gonna look like there's no lights there at all? Would you blend it some way or another so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb?
Yes, sir. You would do that, but once again, without me knowing anything about it, what's there, I mean, if you were saying a bright white, that could be the color rendering, without getting into weeds, a lot of technical information, I mean, they could have been LED is fine, but there's 5 shades of LED. From your highest white light down to your color corrected light, which will soften but still get you, uniformity, saving you 60-70% on energy. And we always set a criteria that is on a national guidelines in basically the electrical engineer design Bible that we go to on the max and mins and minimum requirements. And once again, we look at minimum requirements, once again, based on if it's just roadway, if it's the width of the street, if it's sidewalks one side, sidewalks on both sides, paths, bike routes, the whole 9 yards. So without looking at that, sir, I really couldn't getting the answer. Short term, yes, try and blend it to make it more uniform, without reinventing the wheel there, without taking stuff out and putting it back. You know, there are options that if the city thinks they're too bright, you know, there are retro kits that you can to soften the color correction. Instead of the bright white, you get more of the little yellow, not like the HPS. You know, your HPS is everything washes out in the gray.
What would the kits cost?
The kits are, and it varies, but probably about $125 to $150 a kit. And basically, you're just replacing what the very inside, no globe, no everything. You just take the guts and you put this new kit in. And once again, I'd have to see what your systems are and see what we can do. But yes, definitely make it, try and make it more uniform, blend. You know,
You guys get a lot of complaints from the.
Not that I know of.
Nobody's complaining.
Yeah, nobody's complaining about how bright it is. I think Kevin's possible question, and don't want to put words in his mouth, but maybe he's talking about taking a look at that final phase of Mace Road and reducing the number of light standards that we have there. But if we did that, then would that make that final phase stand out from the existing? Is that what your question was?
Right, yeah, because I look at us, we're spending more money on fixtures and more money on power than what we can. We can get by with less.
See, you know, with this spacing as tight as it is, I'm really surprised that somebody would even do that. Because you can achieve so much better with spacing. I mean, right now on our post tops, you know, on LED systems that we're putting in or designing to have put in, I mean, I'm getting post tops with spacings 125 foot and getting uniform with a minimum requirement in the middle of it. So depending on what your wattage is and lumen output, you know, but yes, we could do the best we can to plan.
Well, you guys did, or at least manage the last phase that we installed, did you not, on Mace Road? You may not have done the drawings on it, like I don't think
That
you're
was
doing.
Bartlett and West.
Well, Bartlett
Yeah.
and West is also doing the drawings on this one, but didn't they oversee it from an engineering standpoint?
Yeah, I don't know when they come in. I don't remember when Cochran come in,
So I'm
take
pretty
over
sure
our engineer when that one. I
When
don't-
Dave picked the plans up, Dave Van Leer, from Bartlett and West, there was no streetlights.
There was what?
There was none. Okay. And Dave worked with Bartlett to make sure it was lit well, and he did a really good job. But I think there's too much. And I think what we're really trying to get to here, I'll be curious your opinion, but if you really want to get consistency, you have to establish a foot candle level across a desired distance. You know, across 100 foot of pavement, you want to average 10 and 12 foot candles, okay? And then, depending on what foot candle level you have, and depending on what fixture you choose, that will determine how many you need and at what spacing.
See, the criteria with that, yes, sir, you're right. But it's just, once again, if you're putting in post tops or you're putting in ornamental teardrops or something, that max and min, you know, if you're putting in 12-foot post tops, you don't want a foot candle of 7 right there. Because people, it's 12 foot and you're enhancing pedestrian beside your roadway. So you gotta, there's a balance there to where, because people are going underneath a 12-foot street light, 100-watt LED that's the bright white. Well, you need sunglasses, you know, and then, so you gotta balance it. Either it's on one side of the street, both sides of the street, and each time, and we do have software programs to where I review and actually have manufacturers run for me what we propose, and to get my max and min, as they call it, your maximum output and minimum foot candle, which is always, I shoot for 0.5, which is, that's the industry, the national standard.
Half a foot candle?
Yes, sir. For pedestrian and roadway within certain span of the street.
What little bit of research I saw, that is extremely dark. I
You
will
know.
tell you. I'd say that if you were at foot candles right underneath one of those lights, of course, if it's out in the middle of the street, but do we have them on both sides of Mace Road? We do.
No.
No, just one side.
Is it just one
One
side?
side.
So you're gonna give a higher foot candle rating up close to the pole than you are across it, but I would gather, based on going down there and what little bit of the parking lot experience I have with Taco Bell's, that you're somewhere between 10 and 15.
That's almost unheard of, you know, for a residential street.
It's brighter than the Parkway. Parkway's probably in the neighborhood of 8,
Yeah.
would be my guess. But without and you can buy them for $50 or $75, but a foot candle meter and just walk around and just kind of see how it is. And that's what you try to do, is you space them so that the average, based on the photometric of the fixture, is that you get an average foot candle of X, okay? And you try not to have any dark spots and so forth. Sidewalks present a different issue, because many times there's a different foot candle standard for a sidewalk versus driving pavement. Okay, so to your point, you do have to blend that in. Okay.
You know, once again, it depends if it's a residential street, a collector street, arterial.
Right.
You know, median in the front and median splitting, tree canopy, once again, that all has to play into the equation.
So you're saying that the guideline is basically, has to really be broad because you have to look at each project.
Yes, sir. Each project is totally independent of itself. We have guidelines, you know, we have criteria of what to follow. But, you know, with that, depending on what type, then I can, you know, space everything, and once again, based on what the city wants, what type of light, what they're trying to achieve. But every project is different.
Isn't that rather difficult to do? Because I'm looking at it from a standpoint of, you know, we have contractor or developer XYZ comes in and we tell him what we want. He goes out and, you know, he's gonna take a shot in the dark on what we think we want for the lighting, but then we're gonna tell him, no, that's a little lighter, a little darker, because the criteria you're saying is not kind of etched in stone.
Well,
And real quick, and that's where we get back to this again. So what happens is that you want to light at each intersection. You want to light the intersections. And what this is saying here is, depending upon the distance between intersections, do you have 1 or 2 or 3 lights in between? That's just all there is to it, because that's it. That's what you're trying to figure out. And that's what this guideline's telling you with these type of LED specifications. So what you have here is more lights than what you had in the guidelines before. Again, we're talking about there's 2 different things going on here. When a developer comes in, they need guidelines. Because Amaranth's gonna put their lights in and you're gonna rent them, you're gonna pay for them, you're gonna take them over. So you gotta give them some guidance. You gave them guidance, you're giving them guidance with this. If you guys are gonna do your own project, Mace Road, then you're gonna wanna do it based on a lot of things, based on aesthetics, based on your budget, based on, is this a main street? What kind of road is this? What are you trying to achieve? It's more of a custom design situation where you're gonna look at what the light looks like. How tall do you want it to be? How short do you want it to be? And those are things that you decide as a group, and we all work together to get what you want. There's two separate deals going on here,
Yes, but you can establish a minimum foot candle average. Okay, so for example, it's sitting over there where he's sitting, that's a different foot candle than there is right here on this table.
Yes, sir.
Because that light's shining straight down and it's got light shining up above him and so forth. And so what you can do, to your point, to drive some consistency is you can establish a minimum foot candle average.
Sure.
Okay, now you may want a different minimum foot candle average for Greenwood Circle, which is way down in the residences, compared to a Mace Road or a Passover compared to a Parkway. Okay, now, I'm not saying what those should be, and I'm not saying they should be different. But what's frustrating to me as I go through town is you know, Mace Road is a perfect example. I'm glad we're talking about it. Passover's just about the same. Passover and Mace Road are a lot brighter than the Parkway, or at least that's the perception. Without a foot candle meter, I don't know. But I think that, how would I say this? You're on the right track saying a little different than I would, but we need to determine what kind of lighting. Do we want post-op lighting predominantly? And that's what we've done since basically Passover. We've done that on Nichols, we've done that, we've added some in because in Harbor Heights, where I'm at, we did post-op. There's a brochure, I don't know if you guys have it, but there's a brochure that describes what a post op is, okay? And because we had underground power, that they didn't want, there was no poles down there, they put those in, okay? And, at the end of the day, if you put those post ops very close, and depending on whether they're, 10 years old when it was high pressure sodium or something, and today it's LED, they're gonna look different, but what really matters is when you're standing in the middle of the street and you look down at your toes, is how well you can see your toes. Okay? That's what foot candle ratings are, okay? And so when you ask, well, do you have to have all these things, and do you have to have wide guidelines, I disagree. I believe you can have minimum guidelines, and they can design to those, depending on the type of fixture you want. Now, if you want Cobra overheads on and power, if you've got poles already there, power poles, okay, well, then those Cobra heads may have to be at a different level to get you that foot candle, okay? If you want post ops, they're consistently about the same height. I mean, I think there is some 9s versus 12s or something. Right,
Your
I mean,
post
but,
ops, we'll
right,
put it
but
16
that's
post ops.
that's the ballpark of the average, post top that you're gonna see out there, is in that ballpark somewhere. And you can choose a little difference, but depending on, so if you put 16-foot high post tops in the same fixture, and you want minimum foot candles, you may have to put them more often than if you put a 9-foot. Okay?
Oh, no, yeah, very
With the
definitely.
same fixture.
Definitely, yeah.
Right.
You're very definitely now with the, we have in every set of our specifications, after we go through this and all that, we follow the IES-NA standards, which is the Bible of electrical street lighting design.
National-
And it's got what you're asking for right here,
Right.
the table's right
Yeah.
here.
There's magazines.
I've not found that. I found some other stuff, but I've not found that.
And what this table, I can show it to you, but it's just like we're talking about. It's so vague, it's even got it broke down to different, one of the column, okay, so just to show you, it's expressway, major, collector, local. But then it's broken up into local, each one of them with pedestrian conflict area. A lot of pedestrians, some pedestrians, no pedestrians, so that's a whole nother criteria. And then it's got pavement classification, is the pavement concrete, asphalt, what's the pavement? It's just so, looking at it, I'm just like,
See, now,
let's go see what we like somewhere, and if that's the lighting level we want, let's replicate that, because trying to go off of this is just gonna,
and that's an older one where they're just revised this, and I have not received it as of yet. But the foot candle used to measure off the pavement. Well, you don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Your foot candles are your luminance, as it's called, you measure 3.5 foot off.
Okay.
Because if you're on a car, that's when everybody's sitting, that's your line of sight. That's your line of sight typically, so that's what you do, but it's the same principle, sir.
because even this one here is foot candle and illuminance on this table. Now the new table, they're taking out we're used to saying foot candle. Now they're taking that out, and they're going with illuminance.
Yeah,
It's the same thing, it's just,
The young engineers call it luminance, us old guys still call it foot candles. But, yeah, you're trying to achieve, like you were saying on Mace, is you're bright, dark, bright, dark. You got, obviously you're never going to achieve like hypothetically, 8-foot candles all the way down. But you want to blend it to where you don't have a dark spot. Your dark spot is your minimum. And that's what I'm trying to achieve. We're always trying to achieve for the minimum, no dark spots.
because when we were at Clayton, when I was at Clayton 20 years ago when the LEDs first came out, I didn't want to use them because we're used to high pressure sodium, they have a better light distribution. The LEDs were really hot. They were really hot underneath the lighting. So you would have dark spots. You'd have great parking lot lighting, and then you'd have a dark spot on your street, and that didn't work. So we didn't start doing LEDs till about, 5 years ago?
Oh, no, we started probably, Dave, you were gone, probably about 10 years.
So LED street lighting is about 10 years old, right? Even
What?
Amaranth.
It's older than that, but we never used it, you're
Yeah.
right. I mean, the cost, the photometrics, the prismatic distribution wasn't there because of your diodes. And once again, I don't want to, get too technical, but your diodes, they couldn't, it's a heat source, basically a diode is a heat source, and it shoots straight out,
It's a tube. It sends a tube out instead of a cone. Like
But
that.
now, with the
Yeah, that's right.
distributions, with the new design and everything, instead of having 1 or 2 or 6, there's 20 or 30, and then you have prismatic refractors or reflectors to get your distribution. And the prices come down substantially too.
So we always design LEDs now. We were doing high pressure sodium about, what, 10 years ago?
Oh, yeah.
Even less than that?
Right?
But
Well,
now
that's
we
so-
come in with LEDs.
But
for
once
sure.
again, it's what the
what the-
agency wants.
Right.
You know, one good thing too, that it's a good selling point when we've done presentations. Your emergency management love the LED because with your high pressure sodium, if you drive down the street, everything looks gray. It's kind of washed out into a grayish color in your figures and everything. But with your LEDs, even with the color corrected LEDs, you can get layman's terms, HPS, high pressure sodium, your color rendering index is about a 23. And I'm just using numbers. But with LED, it's about a 75. So your emergency management, your police and everything really, really love that because they can distinguish color, they can distinguish features. It's so much better on pedestrian traffic, your bike traffic, because people can see distinction. With the HPS, you don't get that. So that's another, reason really to go to an LED, which I think, sitting here is definitely a little more with that.
Okay, so we've got a guideline, and as you've defined it, it's one that we would use with new developers. Should we have a separate set of guidelines for city projects? And I think what we're all attempting to try to get to is some level of uniformity, so that, we're able to, control cost as much as we can. If someone puts something in that we're ending up having to take over, we're the ones that are gonna have to foot the electric bill, on that. And then also, on your posts and on the heads, well, I don't know what you call those, Richard, but,
Fixture.
the fixture itself, you want uniformity there so that we don't have to have a lot of different items in inventory, when it comes time to, doing maintenance and so on and so forth, at least on those that, we have the responsibility for.
So you can achieve that. It can be achieved. Basically, the first thing is, what does the city want? As far as aesthetics. We always go with the aesthetics first because you have your constituents that, play a part in this. You make the decisions, but if somebody don't like it, I've been in public for years and years, and you get the calls. So basically, we say, okay, what does the city want? What are they trying to achieve? And then from that point, we can come and take a look at what's available. If you want post stops, or you want teardrops, or you want standard cobra heads, and we whittle that down based on the minimum criteria that we're trying to achieve for roadway, illuminance, and once again, we have to, all these formulas have to come into play. That we select 3 that would fit your criteria, fit our design criteria, and go from there, and you can put them in as a standard. Very simply, on different locations, you can have the exact same fixture, just change the wattage. Your lumen output, brighter, less, and now what we're doing now on systems that I'm designing right now, I have a option built in. It's a output wattage module built into each one of the fixtures to where you can adjust it. From 100% lumen output down to about 60%. Now it's manual. They have digital ones that are very, very, very expensive. We haven't done any of those, but manually you can do it, especially in residential areas.
Yeah, we have some commercial that's using that kind of stuff.
There's some to where residents, first of all, somebody never fails that this person don't want to light in front of their house. So we always have to kind of look into that when you make presentations to your constituents, and okay, but in that case, instead of putting the old-fashioned house shields so they wouldn't get light, we just turn it down.
Right.
It can be turned down. So there's, you can get, the standard, the assembly standard, the aesthetic standards, you could, very definitely can get a uniformity, just adjust the wattages, putting
It's
higher or lower wattage.
It's been mentioned a couple of times, and maybe I don't understand it. Why would we have a standard that is different for us than the contractors? That, to me, does not sound very fair.
Okay, so that's why I got this slide. There's two different things again, keep in mind. This is the KK Drive, it's, I don't know these streets right here. This is the one that has 5 lights on it. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's over, someone help me here.
It's right in front of Purcell.
You guys know right here? There's a light here,
Just
there's
west
a
of
light way
KK.
down here, and there's 5 lights, okay? That's your old standard. That's your old standard, that's your 400-foot max spacing, okay? That is a developer coming in and wanting to know what to do, and you told them, and they're gonna be Amaranth lights that you are going to take over someday and pay for each light each month. Okay, that's not specific city decorative street lighting. You guys have no control over that. Amaranth has 5 or 6 lights. You could probably pick which light you want, but they're all gonna look about like that. Not decorative, okay? But you might have a say in that. And then right now, the developer is gonna put in as few as possible, which was 400 feet, and there's 5 lights right there. And I guarantee if I go out there, it's not lit. I mean, I could barely see that. I look at the one light, I'm trying to take a picture of the other one, and it's way down the road. It's 400 feet away. It's down the road. And I don't blame them. That's what they do. Okay, so that's a developer coming in. That's why you gotta do something with this to get more lights in your project. But you're not gonna get what we're talking about, your lights on Mace Road. You're not gonna get a decorative light like that when the developer comes in with this deal, the way things work.
They're the same cost.
Do what?
They're the same cost.
Same.
With Ameren, they're the same cost. That post hub right there, compared to what Ameren sells that is down on that looks like what's on Mason, looks like what's on Passover, is the same cost from Ameren.
Okay, so you're paying per pole, let's just say $23 a month per pole on these, and you're paying the meter price on those ones you own. So it's different.
Correct, I said if we used Ameren's, so Ameren offers one that looks extremely similar. I got it right here, I can send this out. I didn't want to step on I didn't know if you had these. But there's a contemporary post hub, and that's exactly what that is.
Right.
That's called a contemporary post hub. It costs $1,000 up front, and it costs $22 a month. We put something in that was a more metal post, it's a little more decorative on Passover and also on Mace Road at a cost of $6,000 per pole up front.
Yes.
And so the payback on that is somewhere, the break even on that is somewhere around 25 to 27 years. If we never have a bulb go out, or anyone hit a pole, or anything break. Okay?
See, the one
And
thing.
so, if I can finish, if you
Oh, I'm
don't mind,
sorry,
that's
excuse me.
okay.
I'm
I'm
sorry.
I was getting there. One of the challenges I've had in your recommendations from day one is that you recommend we honor poles. I struggle with that immensely. Because when I can go to Ameren and get basically the same thing that cost me $6,000 today, where I can get it from Ameren and just pay $1,000 and $22 a month for the next 25 years to get to the $6,000, I just soon Ameren take care of them and pay that money that way.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And what I'm saying is if you own your own streetlights, if you did, other cities and in the state of Missouri want to own they want to own Ameren street lighting system, like this one here, like you got it. They want to own this street light, because they don't want to pay $23 a month. They want to pay, what was it per light? $3 per month for the energy. That's what they want. If you could snap your finger, so I agree with what you're saying. What you could do on future projects is, again, you're gonna get whatever light you want from Ameren, and then Ameren owns all your lights and you pay for them. There's that option. You could do that, or you could do your own street lights.
Part of the reasons you look at that, though, Richard, is because it depends on what your deal is. In other words, is that light being purchased by us or by the developer? That's got to be considered into it, the initial purchase of it. And are they purchasing it and then giving it to us? The other thing is that purchase being done with normal sales tax, or is there a bond issue or a one-time money that you have a pot that you can dedicate? Because what you're doing by a monthly thing is you're creating monthly costs, and our O&M, boom, 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 as compared to being able to buy down, put a bigger chunk up front, but not have so much O&M. So there's some of those reasons that have to be taken into And I'm not saying that that was it, but that's,
Right.
that could have a bearing.
Right, I don't disagree, but what I do know is that where we own light poles, I think you talked about it, or somebody did earlier, and we've had people hit them. I think there was one up by Walmart by the puppy place, okay? I mean, when somebody hit it, we had to manage it, Stacy drove her crazy trying to get that thing done, okay? Something had to deal with insurance and, you know, who hit it. I don't know that we got the insurance, I don't know if we ever knew who did it, but it was a project we had to manage, okay? And if there was no insurance involved, we had to pay to replace that because we owned it. And so my math around 22 to 25 years, maybe as much as 28, is based on there's not a single pole ever hit, there's not a single bulb goes out, there's not a single problem with any of those lights, okay? And so, although I'm not a finance whiz, and somebody here, Mike, Gina, whatever, will tell you, I think that if their client asks them, I can do this a month, okay, for 22 years, or I can pay X up front and I'll break even 22 years later, they're gonna say, go ahead and spend the less money up front and wait 22 years, okay? Because most people wanna pay back up 3 to 5 years.
The thing is, and I hopefully,
For break even.
you know, sorry, I think you were a developer
that's
at
okay.
one time, but anyway. Let the developer pay
Yeah,
for
get the
it.
developer to pay for your lights and you're
You, the
paying.
developer pay for it, then turn it over to the city.
Oh, I agree, but
I mean, that's what, I mean, when I was with City of Clayton, I mean, probably 60% of our downtown streetlights, and they average $14,000 a light. If you wanted to build in City of Clayton, that's part of the package. And then everything is done to your standards, your design. When it's all said and done, here you go.
Because the way you're doing it now is that you're telling the developer to put in Amaranth streetlights at a minimum spacing, that's where you're at, LED. And then you're gonna take over, and the rub is that, and actually $23 a month is a pretty good number compared to what we've seen throughout the state. Most of them are like 28, 29, and they keep raising the rate every few years. So these cities are freaking out over this deal. I mean, there's lawsuits against the Amaranth over this all the time. But like Gary's saying, the ideal situation is have the developer put in your streetlights, the ones that you're gonna own, and you're gonna maintain. That's the ideal situation.
Right.
But right now, you're not doing that. You're telling the developer to put in Amaranth lights at a minimum spacing.
And then you have to pay for it this way.
In perpetuity, and it's a lot, and in perpetuity.
Oh, yeah,
it is.
no, you have a very valid point, sir, but it's just, you have a developer. You know, in the big picture, you know, they may, oh, well, you know, that we're giving this away. Well, in big picture development, that's nothing. And that's one good way to get a system you want, and all you have to worry about is the energy cost, and obviously maintenance. You know, you have a valid point, I don't know if you have an electrical division, or you have one
they
contract,
they do some street lighting work.
Because
Yeah, but when they get hit by cars on the parkway,
There's risks
that's,
involved in putting
that's
people on the
usually
streets on poles.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
not always in-house.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I've done that, I mean, I was responsible for street lighting, you know, 2,500 street lights in the city, plus traffic signals. And, I mean, we had knockdowns. You know, that's part of doing business, but fortunately, you know, the insurance companies and everything like that, sure, you're not gonna get money every time, but probably 9 times out of 10, you're gonna get reimbursed, plus everything, plus the cost of all the labor, the material, the equipment.
But you need resources to manage that process, because they don't manage the process for you.
Correct.
Right.
So we ran the numbers, we started having this discussion 10, 15 years ago. Clayton has 2,500 streetlights. So if we were paying 2,500 times that rate right there, that's a lot of money. And Clayton was able to buy Amaranth out or switch it over
1987.
1987. Well, Amaranth won't do it anymore. They won't let you do it. So what I was trying to say was, again, if you guys were exploding in all this development, you're getting Amaranth light, you know, new development in with another 100 Amaranth lights. You know, that's something that 5 lights, it's not going to kill you know, it's not that big of a deal, but it is something to wrestle with.
You know, Mayor, like you were saying, I agree 100% that if you have a rigid criteria, the developer comes in. You have this rigid criteria, because if you don't, a developer is going to shortchange you. You know, he's going to try and cost down for that. You know, so you need to build in a very rigid criteria. If, you know, say, okay, fine, we have this. This is the max and the mins. This is what we want. It's gotta be approved prior, submittals have to be approved prior to any installations, any ordering, anything. So you build that in. It's the old adage, you can't fight City Hall. In the long run, you guys have the ultimate decision.
You know what we need to do also, just thinking about it, in this right away, that light you found you like better, that needs to be spec'd out in here.
Sure.
That needs to be redlined in here before you adopt anything at a minimum.
If we decide that's the way we want to go.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
because it's nicer than this one, you're saying, you think? It looks better, more decorative?
Well, for those that are familiar, if you've been down Passover, or you've been over in
I think I got past
what's
it.
the Villas of Green Glaze, those are called the aspen post top. They're a little more ornamental.
That's Passover right there.
Right, huh? Yeah, that's the aspen, that's Passover.
They got
That's
a
the
cage,
aspen.
a cage and a band on it.
Yeah, that's, and I don't know that it's the exact fixture, but it's very, very similar. And I just got the manufacturer from Amaranth today of what they have. So if you go to the one on KK, back to the one on KK, that's called the contemporary post top. And those cost the same amount every month for me.
And I think, man, just throwing ideas here, so this, it does look totally like an Amber light, it's probably the one they buy, and all you guys do is you put this decorative base on. Maybe that's something that you require in here too. Hey, do the Amaranth light, you gotta get the one we want, and you gotta put on this decorative base for us. There you go, now you're getting a decorative light.
What we're doing more of is we're upgrading streets like we've done Passover, like we've done Mace, like we've done Nichols, okay? And the latest numbers that came out of phase 2 of Mace Road, we put 25 fixtures in at $6,000 a piece at $150,000. Okay, and the basic question is, should we have spent $150,000? Or should we have spent, because each one of these decoratives, the aspens and the contemporaries have a $1,000 charge up front, or should we have spent $25,000 up front and started spending $22 a month, and we would have broke even on that with zero maintenance 27 years later?
But I think, look at that, another flip side, say you're spending $22 a month for energy and maintenance. Ameren, for 10 years, isn't gonna touch that. So you're spending that amount of money for nothing. Your energy is included, but maintenance, there's an annual maintenance fee. Well, if the lamp don't go out, or it doesn't get knocked down or anything, that's just money, that's their golden goose. That's the way they're making money.
Oh, I don't disagree with that, but the thing is, it takes 27 years to get ahead of them.
And maybe what you do, I don't know if you can do it, is there any way?
And I can tell you that the post top that's in front of my house, okay, it's been there since about 2004 or 5. They've replaced that light at least 4 or 5 times.
2004, it wouldn't be LED.
No, it wasn't. It's right, but so bottom line is there was, they paid for that maintenance, okay? And if anybody would have come through our neighborhood and hit a pole, it wouldn't have been, we got to go find somebody in our city to find the contractor, to get the pricing, to work with the insurance company and so forth. We'd have called Ameren, and probably within a week or two, depending on stock and everything else, because Ameren's been pretty good from what I've seen, they'll have the pole replaced without.
You guys, well, you're in Osage Beach and Ameren owns the lake, and we have different criteria in St. Louis.
You may get different service there, I don't know.
Yeah, they're not they're good, but they're not as punctual,
They're awesome.
Go back to that one day, that one post out. This is a prime example of.
This post up?
No, the other one.
Which other one? Which way am I going? Beginning or the end?
There, yeah.
Amber.
This is a prime example where you tell a contractor, we need 6 street lights put in. If you don't have the parameters, they're putting in this. Look what they have across the street. That light basically is taking care of this. That light, all it does is illuminate your parking lot. Because there's no sidewalk, so they just threw that in to satisfy.
I don't know why those
They're
are
in their
there.
400 foot
It makes no sense that those are there, to be quite
Oh,
honest.
right, I mean, it's obviously somebody, well, we're gonna put in 6 street lights, on the public right of way, or right up the right of way to enhance. Well, they did for their development over than any effectiveness of the post.
Because I'll tell you, I do like this number. I mean, for those lights, $629 a month, that's a good number. That's good.
Yeah, it was $700 and some thousand
I don't
up
like-
front.
That was
I don't
the
like
billing
that
bill.
number, that's $740 you're paying per light that you own, that's not a good number. I do like the 310 per light. Again, how we get there, that's, I know what you're asking.
I don't remember, but I remember it's a big number. It was not long after I moved here, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 to $700,000 to get to that $3 a month on the ones that you first put up there.
Which,
Those minus ones, those big ones.
oh, those guys?
Yes.
Well, I don't think you relitigate this one. There's 250 of them, you're at $6, I just did a
Well,
lot.
I understand, but
You
keep
got
in
it.
mind,
I turned the page on
the
that one.
upfront cost has to be involved in the mathematics, in the equation, if you
Sure
want
it
to
does.
talk about, the most effective and efficient way to light streets.
I mean,
So,
granted, you gotta have, it takes money, very definitely. The other thing too is not only a developer, but on another side of the coin, if you go out for STP projects, CAP projects, well, CAP projects, you can't use lighting anymore, but STP projects and stuff, okay, the city's paying 20%. And that's where a lot of the agencies
Yeah, a lot
that
of-
we're dealing with, that's how they're getting.
a lot of it works great because they only pay 20%. In your case,
Makes
you guys
perfect
don't
sense.
have.
That's when-
Right.
That's when you would purchase lights yourself and just buy the electricity.
100%, yeah.
If MoDOT's gonna pay 80%, you're only
And
paying
they've
20,
been- I
yeah,
mean,
and you
the
can include
grants
lighting
deal.
in that, yeah.
Yeah, Dave's a wizard with the grant applications, and we've done, I wanna say, it's getting to the point, it's almost 50% of our improvement projects are going with lighting. 40%, 45%.
So they're just replacing the existing lighting, is that what
We're
they're
getting
doing?
rid of Amaranth
adding
lights.
on-
We're getting rid of Amaranths.
lights.
And then we're getting our system put in at 20% the cost,
Uh-huh.
and it pays off in like 6 years. Like yeah, 6 times 5,
Right.
20%, 20%.
So that is a cost reduction, granted, it's not the installation cost, but that is a reduction.
But keep in mind, like Gary said, it all starts with aesthetics. It does. I mean, if you're gonna go with those Amaranth lights, and have an Amaranth-owned system, is that what you guys want? I know we're throwing a lot at you, but you're never gonna get this light. You're not gonna get, if you wanna, I don't know if you put banners on those or not, or
Yes, we do.
you do put banners on those?
Yeah.
On your Amaranth lights, you're not gonna put, I don't think they're putting banners on those Amaranths, are they, Gary? Or here?
Typically, they won't allow that.
I don't think you're gonna get
I
them
don't
on.
think we have any place where we put banners.
We do on, we do on Nichols
On
Road.
Nichols, we do,
Yeah.
but we own those.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Amaranth won't allow, like,
You're not getting banners on these Amaranth lights.
like receptacle, built-in receptacle,
Right.
banner arms, hanging baskets, that's Amaranth. That's another caveat, there's the pros and cons.
Right.
I completely appreciate where you're coming from about the fact that it's aesthetics, but I don't believe that that's the baseline. The baseline's safety, okay? The reason you put lights on streets is for safety.
Sure.
Okay? And then if you want to get into aesthetics, which I'd love to stay away from because that is just a quagmire, okay? You can go there, okay? If you want to get to aesthetics is whether you want a contemporary post-op or a Aspen, that's okay. But if you want to get into CRIs and Kelvin ratings, I don't think we want to go there unless we just want to say, hey, guys, you figure it out and tell us what to do, because we don't want to know that much
And
information.
basically, that's what the agencies have done. And once again, we're starting from scratch on a lot of the agencies that have very few lights, very few. We're putting in these systems. We're saying, okay, we can achieve this, and I can even show the software system is called Visual. And plunking them in where they're at, it actually shows the Loomis rating wherever it's at to make sure that we can screw them in, screw them out, stagger them, whatever we need to do to achieve those minimum standards.
Another thing that we work with other cities, just like you guys, we put in on a lot of residential type areas, Cobra Head, fiberglass breakaway Cobra Heads that are black. They're 20 feet tall.
They'll range.
They're not decorative. They light the street. They're there to light the street, light the sidewalk. Those are not $6,000 a pop. Those are probably, I'm gonna say, 4,000.
Yeah.
Let's just say
It's
4,000. But again, it's 4,000 a pop, and the spacing is what? 200. 200. That's something you ought to consider as well. Again, now, and run the math on that. You're not gonna get that from Amaranth, but that would be a great city street light to own, that system, if you could make the math work on that one. That goes good.
I mean, even with those, like this post right here, there's no ornamental base. I mean, with that type, it's a direct burial fiberglass pole, you can get a base to slide right over that pole, make it a little more ornamental.
We put banners on those?
No.
On So there's that too, that's something else you have to, you know what I'm talking about, the tall Cobra head fiberglass that's not gray or, you know, it's black, you don't even really know it's there, it gives you a great lighting level. That would be nice for you guys to own too, instead of these Amaranth, you know, here's the thing, these Amaranth ones, they're short, you gotta have a lot of them, and you gotta pay at least $23 a month for them, and that's what I'm trying to just be cognizant of.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of colors you can get smooth. Like that pole right there, you'll see the fiberglass spun, the banding. Well, you can get those now where they're smooth. They're smooth.
So what you're saying is we could go with a different kind of lighting, a taller light that pushes your light out farther.
Yes,
So
sir.
what you end up doing is you end up not requiring as many
Yes,
lights,
that's-
you know, to light the same area.
That's it in a nutshell.
And
You're
that's where
exactly
that's
right.
where you're offsetting your savings.
I'll give you a great example, I was out, you're talking about that, what's the Highway 42 going down to the new high school, that school?
Right.
That to me, you don't need decorative street lighting on that roadway, you need lighting on that roadway. You need exactly what I'm talking about, you need Cobra head style lighting that you guys would own, that lights 200 feet apart. That would be nice, instead of the Amaranth, you know, Amaranth puts their lights up there, you're paying, you know, you're renting those forever, so that's.
Well, here's another example, you know, we're talking about, you know, having a developer, you know, we've got the Arrowhead development, and when we worked with that developer, one of the things that he wanted to do is he was trying to build the aesthetics around, at least initially, it hasn't gotten there yet, not anywhere close, but, you know, he wanted the whole development, you know, to have a certain aesthetic look, okay? So when we talked with him about that, you know, it was like, this is the lighting head I want, this is the pole I want. You know, he was going to install them, make sure everything, you know, met city standards. They were going to buy additional lighting heads and poles, provide those to the city, and then the city, once the development was done, we would take that over, and then we would have, you know, the additional in inventory, you know, for maintenance or replacement and so on and so forth. In that particular case, it falls right in line with what you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
And with a major development, I think that's, you know, what, you know, you will see us do.
See, you can even take another step is, you know, obviously there's gonna have to be a meter, you know, panel, pedestal set somewhere on the right of way to control your lighting. Have it designed into a location to where you can utilize that panel for future. You know, design it, you know, once again, that's what I do is if we know there's certain phases coming down on eventual phases, I make sure that our load center, our power source, is where, okay, in phase 2, I don't need to put in another power source. I always have one here, and I design it accordingly, you know, and, you know, there. And the other thing too, and I'm going back on the maintenance end, because I've been in ditches half of my life, is when you have these pedestals, you know, the load center panel pedestals, they're designed to where instead of each light, they have one main switch for maintenance, you know, and it's great for the maintenance people, because they love that. Because at that point, you have no power running to any of these lights throughout the course of the day or any time. The only time you have one uniform, one control panel, one photo cell that's controlling the whole thing, which is a major safety feature. You know, if you're gonna get contractors come in, they don't get their permits or call Missouri one call, come through and they hit that, you know, and it's just, but this, you have no power to any of these lights. And then also, if you would ever want lights on the ornamentals, if you have receptacles, everything is controlled, you know, for festive lighting and all that stuff. It's all controlled with the panel.
Well, where do we need to be? What do we need to be? What do we need to be providing to you? You know, I guess this is probably where we were back in October. And I think we have a better understanding here of, at least, you know, Gary, with you being here and talking about, this was one of the things I know Richard was talking about, was the lumens and using, you know, those as guidance, you know, too, from a standard standpoint. So, you know, where do we need to be as far as trying to move this forward? What do you need from us?
Isn't there standards that are established by, by codes?
There's, yes,
'Cause-
and, there's national guidelines, yes, sir.
So, because I always feel like, especially in my prior life, as a fire chief, is I always wanted to hang my hat on the codes, not write our own.
Well, we've got that built
You know,
into
and,
these,
and
into
so,
these guidelines.
if we could do that, then we don't, it's much easier to defend it, that if we ever have to.
These guidelines and these revisions that we have in here and every set of plans that Cochrane designs, we design and we build meets these codes. Meets these codes. And in our specifications on page 1, maybe page 2, it has a list of recommended guidelines that have to follow. And part of that is the IESNA roadway lighting minimum requirements, along with your state and local requirements and everything. So, and we look at that, when a contractor developer comes in with submittals, we verify everything.
Do we have, you guys deal with a lot of other cities, not just us. Do you have other cities that have design, lighting design guidelines that, and how do they relate to, what we've kind of put together here?
Well, as far as, I know we've tried to work with a couple, 3 cities, like City of Baldwin, trying to issue a standard. What we are doing, on certain cities, they are getting a standard assembly. Like Deloge, Valley Park, a number of cities, we're establishing their standard, their assembly standard with the criteria that, okay, fine, this standard here, depending on the roadway again, once again, it could be this way, but we can make this work. Or if I have to adjust the wattage a little bit, you have the same exact assembly. And probably myself, Dave, and, Mr. Ross would be the only ones that would know that that wattage is different. Because with the prismatic, the reflections, you have different types of distribution, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, there's a number of cities that do have their criteria standards met.
And again, the cities, it's 2 things. If the city owns the streetlights, which they do in some cases, and they also have the Amaranth lights, they typically have a City of Osage Beach streetlight. The fixture looks like this, the base looks like this. The only difference is what we do is we'll make it taller, we'll put twins on depending upon if it's Main Street and arterial, what it is. But what I've always thought, in Clayton we had, when you're in Clayton, you're in Clayton because the streetlights all look the same. When you're in Wildwood, all the streetlights look the same. Any of these cities we work for, we don't design different streetlights every time. Like Valley Park, we're gonna have the same streetlight. And so Osage Beach, in my opinion, again, snapping my fingers, I would like to see one streetlight in the city of Osage Beach. The only other decorative streetlight. The only other streetlight I like to see is a Cobra head that's kind of, you can't really tell is there, but does a great job of lighting. That's what you're looking for. Now that's us picking what we want, doing what we want. When the developer comes in right now, it's the Ameren UE thing all over again. It's their streetlights, and so we're talking about 2 different things here. If you don't want the developer to go this route and you want them to go with a City of Osage Beach, here's the streetlight you're putting in, here it is. That's what it looks like. It's going to be, and we want them spaced this far. If the road's 26 feet wide or 20 feet wide, we want them spaced this far apart on both sides of the road. I know exactly what we want, would be a nice lighting level. We can do that. We can tell you that answer. But is that where you want to go? You want to tell a developer this is what he's putting in. That's it.
There's a number of cities that are doing that. The City of Clayton, we've done that for years, and more, with development that is fortunately coming in to certain cities, that's part of the criteria.
Because all your streetlights look different right now. This one here doesn't look like that one there, and it doesn't look like.
It's close.
Yeah.
These are very close.
Those are closer to the last one.
Very definitely.
Is this supposedly all of our streetlights that we have?
Do what?
The inventory that you showed here, that's all the streetlights that the city owns?
That's the
Or
ones
that they're paying for?
bills, yes.
Because I know of 3 more that aren't on your list.
Correct.
We're gonna, audit that a little better. I know of a couple streetlights, but they're tied to grinder stations, so.
You know,
that's
and
why
maybe
they're
they're
not on
included in that
end.
list of just
But-
City Hall, but down where I live, we turn those over to the city, and we're not paying for them.
Well, but Kevin, that's what I was trying to say before.
We need to audit
The
it
number
a little.
that was all thrown into the city hall
Right.
number is probably, picks up all that other stuff.
Well, part of what's happened is the
We
problem.
don't know that for sure.
So this, a lot of this town was developed with overhead power, okay? And then as things have gotten built out, for example, Harbor Heights, we never had overhead power down there. We always had pad-mounted power. So it didn't make sense when we went in there and tried to work on a streetlight to put in a pole so that we could hang an arm, that put a Cobra head over and we could put a few less in, okay? Because we only had power in certain places, and we were almost at every house, to be quite honest. We put one in at about every other house, and it's one of those, not that one, but it's the other one like down in KK at Palisades, okay? And so that's gonna be your challenge. So now if you go down Zebra Road, you've got overhead power all the way down through there, okay? You can hang an arm, whether you pay for it or whether Ameren pays for it, you can hang that a whole lot cheaper than you could put one of these things in.
Well, it's something, you're right.
But the maintenance is different too, so if you're gonna own it, which you guys keep telling us we should, and I'm not convinced we should, but that's okay, we can have a discussion. But if you're gonna own it, you gotta get a guy that can get high enough up on that pole to fix that overhead, Cobra head, okay? Because you're gonna have a lift truck now, and you're gonna have them sitting in the middle of the street and like we do on the Parkway, okay? And I think what we did on the Parkway was very smart, okay, Old 54. We went down one side predominantly. Okay, and we put a very bright fixture up there, we directionalized it across, and the Parkway now then 54 looks pretty doggone good. And overall, we got a good price, but it was a very costly amount up front, and now we're paying for some of the maintenance too. But we can't hang banners on them, or we couldn't have if Ameren owned all the poles.
They could be designed with receptacles,
Sure.
and.
They do have receptacles on them, because that's what we hang the
The
snowflakes.
snowflake.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I
Well, we
can see
also
how-
use that for some of the Christmas decoration stuff.
So in my mind, I mean, we need, you touched on this a little bit, and it's kind of complicated, but that's what we need engineers for. It isn't about spacing, it's about foot candles or whatever you call the new word or whatever. We want this on our arteries, i.e. the Parkway. We want this in residential and this in collector, okay? And depending on whether you have pad mounted or you have pole tops, you're gonna use this fixture from either Ameren or this fixture that we designed, okay? When I say we specified, that we picked out that are like the ones that we've got on Passover or something, okay? That's still a question. The question is, are we gonna tell them? But I disagree with the fact that we should just live with spacing. Because if you've got a road that goes like this, you're gonna get dark spots with spacing.
Very definitely, that's what I'm saying.
All right, and so 200 foot of spacing on a road that's straight is a whole lot different.
And here again, I don't know that much about what you're talking about here. You've got more experience
Right.
there. But obviously, maybe what you do is you have a combination of the two,
Right, that's why if you give them the foot candle minimum
Right.
as an average, then they can come up with what the most
What they
effective and
need.
efficient way is to get to that point based on the conditions that are there.
Right.
Whether it's pad mounted or whether they can utilize existing poles. We walked away from a whole lot of existing poles down on Mace Road and decided to put in $6,000 a piece poles that look awesome, don't get me wrong, but we spent a lot of money for that. Where we could have just used the utility poles and hung some arms where we didn't have lighting. Because a lot of the stuff on Mace Road started out as neighborhood poles that we ended up taking over. And some of them I think are still, that are down there, especially as you go down the hill just past Aber, the only light that's in between there is still a guy pays $13 a month for his driveway light.
Mace Road's a learning thing, because number one, I believe that we should have put the aesthetic lights in there, but I believe we put too many in there.
But if we had a
We could have got
minimum,
by less.
right, but if we had a minimum foot candle, that would have drove the right number.
Right. Yeah.
See, and yes, you're right, sir, but that's what we do. Every road is different. Like you said, every application is different to achieve this. So, you can start with, uniform, 200 feet plus or minus. But to get that spacing, whatever it is, you have to meet the minimum luminance for your roadway.
Luminance seem to be more of a directive than distance, which is exactly.
So-
what we're
Right, well, yeah, your
Guys, I'm gonna
luminance
take a
will
break
dictate.
if you all wanna go.
By the way.
Yeah, all right, I'll take a real quick break. You guys keep going.
see, here's a perfect example. What we just approved down on Mace Road where we've got the dog leg, okay? If we use the footage, that will look a lot different than if we use the footage down Mace Road where it's that straight shot all the way down by the apartments and so forth, okay? Because if they spread them 200 feet, there's gonna be some dark spots in that dog leg, okay? And that's why I still believe is that minimum foot candle rating is the best way to do it, because that incents the engineer, the design engineer of the developer, or of the design engineer of the city as we're doing it, to get to that in the most effective and efficient way.
We have built in our specifications also that at the discretion of the project engineer and our public agency, we can require a total luminance design prior to any approval, as part as their submittal package. But 9 times out of 10, we don't need to do that, because I've already done it, you know. So I know what exactly, because we say, here's a design, this is what it is, here's the number of streetlights, here's what the wattage is, it's post out, overhead, teardrop, whatever. This is what it is, and in many cases nowadays, like we talked about, we have proprietary. Once we do one phase, this is the assembly. This is what we put on phase 2 or phase 3. And if it's on the first phase, depending on what the city wants, we'll build the specifications somewhat generic, enough to where it meets the city's criteria, meets our criteria, with 2 or 3 examples. Because I'm not going to say, anti plus or minus dimensions, wattage output to achieve this and stuff, so we do get competitive pricing. But we can go the other route, being public agency, do be a proprietary, and this is basically on a lot of state and federal funded projects. But no, you're right, sir. Mr. Ross, luminance is the key. And I always start, we have a road and we have, once again, like I said earlier, the tree camping. That plays a major, major part into that. So instead of starting at the end of the street, I look at the whole big picture. We print out and I see the whole length and scope of the project. See where intersections are like David.
Yeah, start those intersections, yeah.
We start with intersections. Then I look at the curvature of the roadway. I actually go on Google Earth, or I walk it 2 or 3 times to see what potential conflicts we have, and that's how we achieve the best system for the agency upon their approval.
And you also want the lights on the property line, you don't want them in the front yards.
Right.
I mean, there's all these things you gotta.
Yeah, we always.
It just goes on and on and on, yeah.
I mean, you don't always get that, but, even your spacing varies. I'll vary, and once again, depending on the type of fixture, if it's a post top, or if it's a overhead, or a teardrop, or anything like that. Our spacing, once again, the resident will never know that this pole is 15 feet wider than the other one. Mr. Ross, you would, sorry, you're in the, you're.
Well,
very
yeah,
knowledgeable.
that is the big thing, again, you put them in intersections, it's not simple, you put them in intersections, you make sure you put them on property lines. And the spacing is not gonna be identical for the lights, even though you driving down the road, you think it is, it's never. If it is exactly right, then there's gonna be problems, I guarantee it, because it's gonna be on someone's driveway, right, it's not the right location.
They're not.
It's stuck in a tree.
They're not gonna notice the inequality or the uniformity, like you said, Mr. Rucker. They notice if there's a dark spot. They won't notice if that pole's 15, 20 foot different, as long as there is uniformity in your light. And it's not gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be, there'll be lighting, there won't be dark spots. And that's what you're trying to achieve.
And if we don't, let's just talk about the Arrowhead project, okay? Let's say that a developer comes to town and we haven't clearly specified some minimum standards of what kind of fixture we want. Developer A could go get whatever kind of light fixture, and he can meet that minimum, okay? And then he's gonna hand it over to us. And now we got X type of lights to work on, okay? Then developer B comes in and he's on the other end of town, he likes this other distributor who sells a different manufactured light, okay? And he has to go put those, and he goes and puts those in, and they meet the minimum standard of foot candles, okay? Whatever, if we had put that, but we're gonna get those to maintain. And so now we're gonna have different types of bulbs we need, we're gonna have different types of ballasts or whatever, and I know the ballast is getting old because there's a lot of LED, but you know what I'm saying, okay? And that's why the uniformity and consistency, that if we can get to that point somehow, whether it's with Amaranth fixtures that we rent, or whether it's with some type of fixture and manufacturer that we specify, then at least we can drive that consistency as we build streets and as other people build streets. Or as we upgrade streets is maybe a better way to put it.
So just, and you're exactly right to what you're saying, and the problem you run into, because there's all, it's that, is that if we specify this light, this manufacturer becomes proprietary, the numbers go through the roof. We're having this issue right now in Hillsborough. It's like you can't win, no matter what you try to do. So if you say we want this light that looks just like this, and we sole source it, say it's gotta be this one, then the manufacturer knows it and drives the price up. What happens in Wildwood is, I know it, because I know it, the lights are not identical. They look pretty close to the same, but they're not, and that's kind of where, it's what you're saying.
You pick out 2 or 3 that are very similar as
Right.
standard, okay?
Make them big, make the developer still be able to get, right.
Or you can just go with some Amaranth lights and you can let them deal with all that work.
There's that option too.
Yeah, but you don't, yeah, that's true.
And oh, by the way, the guys 25 years from now, when they have to pay $22 a month, they're gonna be complaining. But the folks right now, we were getting $150,000 more doing something with our streets instead of the lights on Mace Road, are happier.
Well, in
Can't
23
make everybody happy all the time.
23 years, you're not gonna be paying $23 a fixture for that energy and maintenance. There's no way.
That's their numbers.
Well, yes, today. PSC controls, and you guys, PSC controls that, and that, I've never
I'm
seen.
pretty sure those numbers have been that way for 8 or 10 years though.
You know.
Now, maybe they're gonna go up tomorrow, I don't know.
I've never seen a reduction in your monthly billings.
Wow.
But you can, once again, the city has control. Not only with the illuminants, but the criteria of your assembly. Okay, this is what you have to meet. And like you were saying, Mr. Ross, sure, that another developer is coming in, but if your criteria is that tight, here, this is what you have to meet, based on the style, spacing, and everything. And it's easy to do if there's spacings, because if you have the same assembly, like I said earlier, adjust the wattage to achieve your minimum luminance standards.
This is no different than what we do with sewer. We only let them put a certain brand of pump in, okay? Because we don't want to work on 18
Right,
different
we don't
kinds
want
of
to have all
pumps,
that
okay?
inventory of all
And
those
then
parts.
although it's a bit more complicated because, it's lighting and people get a little more, you guys don't want to know about sewer pumps. Well, I don't care about sewer pumps.
I don't care what it looks
Yeah, we
like.
don't see it, okay? But at the same point, that's what we're trying to decide is we want to get to that kind of a program where we have consistency, we meet minimum standards, and we don't have exorbitant maintenance costs or possibly high upfront costs versus low long-term costs.
Yeah, you tell them what assembly you want, or for that development, and then they have to meet the criteria.
Yeah, and that's,
And your spacings could be different from one development to the other, but they're meeting that criteria and it's uniform.
So what do you need from us to help you develop this?
See, it sounds like there's distance, Loomis, and fixture.
well, to me, the big deal is getting the developer to pay for your street lighting system that you want. Is that
Speak up.
Can we all agree on, that would be the ultimate goal?
Well, here again, yes, that would be for new development.
Right.
That's basically what
That's
you're
what-
talking
that
about.
would be- yeah, we're all in
Right,
agreement
yeah.
on that.
And basically, I think we do that anyway.
No, you don't. What you do on a new development right now is you do the Amaranth lights, and you get into paying whatever a month per light.
Oh.
That's what you're doing right now. So if you guys want to go head in that direction of when a new developer comes in and reads your guidelines, hey, you're going to put in these looking lights, it's going to end up being city-owned, we're going to maintain them, and then they put those 100 lights in, let's say. Now, that's a good deal for you guys. That's what you want. You don't want to be paying $25 a light forever for those 100 lights. So that's one option. That's your Amaranth UE
So
developer.
what you're not telling that guy is go to Amaranth and have them, install the poles and whatever, put these in, meet this particular lumen requirement, and then turn it over to us. Because when you do that, then we pay the $23 a month.
Then you're renting.
We want you to go out, buy the poles, install the poles, do this, turn it over to
On
us.
your specification. When
Right.
Ameren-
Oh, no, I understand that, I
No.
understand that.
So like when Ameren, they, you know, Mr. Ross is right, they have like 5 different styles,
Right.
same wattage.
Right. Well,
Right.
again,
You
though,
can't-
what
you can't
you're,
have-
what you're doing to a developer is you're increasing their cost to develop.
Sure,
Okay,
without a doubt.
right. And so, you know, what we've got to measure is, in addition to lighting, you've got all our other requirements, okay, and costs associated with that development. And that's where we start running into problems, okay, is getting those costs so high, you can't develop. They won't develop in your community, in addition to the fact that I don't think we have very many flat lots anymore, you know, so then you've got to deal with the topography issues and so on and so forth. All of those driving development costs up, okay? So yeah, it may be better for us maybe in the long run to have that embedded. You know, it's not for the developer, but for the city it might be. But if we can get a developer to come in and develop, then where are we? Okay,
You know, you could.
we're not growing.
Like you said, you have sewers that have to come in, water has to be improved. you know,
Streets,
and all that.
I mean, the whole
It's
thing.
Infrastructure improvements.
Right.
Part of doing business. And part of the infrastructure is the light, you know.
There's also an option in between, and that is you can tell the developer that he can come in and he can put the Ameren poles in, and he can start paying the monthly fee. And if he doesn't want to pay the monthly fee, and he wants to turn it over to us, well, it's gonna cost $1,500 a pole up front, and we'll take it over to defer the long-term costs, you know? That's also an option. You know, that might be a possibly in between what you're talking about. You don't want to put it all on him up front and keep him from developing.
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want to put him to just call Ameren, put these in, start paying $20 a month and just hand it to you and you got 50 years at $22 a month.
Well, historically though, when we take in one infrastructure, we have taken in all infrastructure. So when we take in roads, they built, you know, we've got the sewers and whatever, we get the lighting to go with it.
Yeah, but isn't there some criteria? I mean, if they're building 2 homes or 20 homes, they've got to put sewer and water and streets in. But should there be some criteria that if they're putting just in, you know, a smaller development, they don't have streetlights? I mean, we have it to where they don't have to have sidewalks if they're a smaller developer. I can't remember the exact criteria, but I do remember that. When there's not a lot of traffic, they don't have to put in a sidewalk. So the smaller projects, should we have that same criteria on the lighting?
Well, I think you're on the right track. I'd say it a little differently, especially with, you know, from Mike's concern back there. If we're gonna put in streets that we might overtake, there's gonna have to be a minimum lumen level, or, I'm sorry, luminosity level versus foot candle level, or whatever you wanna call it. So you're gonna have to provide that. So, and I think that if you're putting in down at Silver Lake, I think it is, isn't that
Yeah,
down on
Silver
the
Lake.
ranch? So if you're
Yeah.
putting a small deal like Silver Lake in, you might only need,
Yeah.
I'll just give you an example, 1 foot candle, okay, all right? But if you're gonna put in a deal like Arrowhead, for example, we may want 5-foot candles, okay? And that's how you solve for that. But I hear what you're saying, Kevin, we don't need the same brightness down on my street, you know, a basic residential neighborhood as we need up on the parkway, but we need some lighting, I think. I will tell you, I lived there when there were no lights, and everybody down there, once we got him in, and God loves Cecil Payne, I don't know how he pulled it off, but he put them all in for nothing, okay? We got them all done for nothing, okay?
You
And
went to Ameren.
he worked at Amaranth.
He worked at Amaranth.
And he was getting ready to retire.
That's
so
right.
Something got pulled off, okay? But at the end of the day, everyone loved him except for one lady, and we had to put a shade up, okay? And she finally, you know, we had to have a discussion. If you want to live in the state park, go live in the state park, okay? But everybody, because it was dark out there, she didn't like light, okay? But everybody else just thought it was wonderful. And all I can tell you is that at the end of the day, I feel safer in my neighborhood because there's some level of street lighting.
Sure. Talking with manufacturers, similar to what you're saying, you know, with the safety feature in not only the vehicular but pedestrian. Talking with manufacturers, and once again, this IESNA is a national guideline. It is not federal regulation, it's not state regulation. It can filter down to local agencies and putting it into their ordinance. They're saying that more and more with attorneys, and hopefully no one's an attorney in here.
Oh, we have one.
Well, sir, I'm sorry, but what
He's
they're
ours.
saying is
He's
that
ours.
there's a lot of attorneys
Yeah.
that are actually, if there's accidents, and everything with, and they're going back to this book. Saying, and they're going out there, you know, the attorneys are going out there and measuring and all this stuff. Well, you don't meet this criteria. And it has gone to court. Even though it's not a federal requirement, it's still a standard guideline to achieve the minimums for safety. And that's where you really, really have to look at that.
I have a little bit of insight of this because my daughter's a traffic engineer for MoDOT. Okay, they have paid out millions of dollars. And oh, by the way, if you didn't maintain them, and they can demonstrate that you didn't maintain them, even if they were designed right, they can hold the deep pockets accountable,
Yes, sir.
the cities or the state. There's one up in Kansas City where there was a bad wreck, and they were able to demonstrate that MoDOT had changed out some lights and so forth for like 5 years. They settled that one out of court, and they paid some big bucks on it. And so, you know, and we assume that responsibility as we own these lights and we have to maintain them. If we don't have that kind, we're not the big city, but, you know, there's always that risk that you have to weigh.
Right.
Okay?
You know, and hang a hat on another is like with your pedestrian, if you have jogging paths, walking paths, bike paths, or anything like that. The good thing to where you can, especially on state and federal funded projects, is if it's for pedestrian lighting, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it without a doubt for ADA compliance and everything like that. So that's, you know, that's something else to take into account.
David, I get back to the question that we kind of tiptoed around. What do we need? What do you need from us to help you all get started? What do we need from you to help us get started? You know, vice versa. Because we do want to move forward with this in setting guidelines. So, you know, how do we do that? I mean, we've got this, you know, based on some conversations tonight, I think even this probably needs to be modified. But, you know, again,
Do we, I guess we're keeping back to this foot candle, the new term of this. Do we run the photometrics on this scenario here and see what that minimum, maximum, average aluminum's level is to coincide with what we're saying here?
That or we can just,
It doesn't answer all of our questions, but
No,
it just,
I mean, it's-
at least it gives you the answer on what.
but I think we could always put in here also that not only these are guidelines, but the guidelines have to comply with the I'm going back again to the luminance and everything, minimum standards that have to meet this based on this. And
we
these are
need to get that
guidelines.
verbiage in here.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And these are guidelines. I mean, it could be 150 feet, you know, like, well, it could be 250 feet.
Right.
You know, here, this is a guideline, you know.
But the luminous aren't a guideline. Those have to be met. However you achieve that, you know, is a different story.
The easy way is have a developer or a contractor or whoever come in and say, okay, I want you design a system based on this criteria with the minimum luminance, this style of fixture.
Right.
With certain parameters.
Right.
And at that time, you submit the details of the assembly, the details and a visual design of the whole system. The visual is basically at every 10 feet,
Right.
they shoot to where your luminance factor is, every 10 feet, based on the spacing
Right.
and everything. Then you're foolproof. You're foolproof.
And we would get that in our preliminary, you know, plats
Yes, sir.
and layouts.
Preliminary, yeah.
Yeah.
Preliminary design and design approval,
Right.
you know.
But we're jumping to city-owned lights.
Yes, yeah, because the thing, I'm just concerned with Amber, yeah, you have a variety, but you're limited. And to achieve that, sure, you may have, like you have now, 50, 60, 70-foot spacing, because if that's what the Ameren light is, because it's 100-watt light. You can't adjust that. Say, okay, we get the same thing at 120 watts and space them this far. See, Ameren don't give you the flexibility of adjusting the wattage. They, you know, that's the one downside with Ameren.
I'm thinking the first question here before we can dive into this and massage it is we gotta answer that question. Is the goal, what do you guys wanna do? Do you wanna have city-owned lights or Ameren-owned lights? That's the first question that has to be decided on. Because we can't do two guidelines. One, well, if you wanna go with Ameren, here's the deal over here. And if you wanna go city-owned, here's the deal over here.
Why not?
Could you? Is that,
You
could you?
could,
We just talked about it.
Do you guys want to do that? I mean, what?
Why not?
you can, but, you know, like Mr. Rucker said, Dave, the problem is, they got them on 50, 60-foot spaces. You know, sure, you can achieve the minimum criteria, but also the other way to get around that a little bit is to do a max criteria.
Hold on, if you give them two options, they're gonna be Ameren right every time. Why wouldn't they?
Because part of that Ameren requirement may be that for us to take them over, it's gonna cost you $1,500 a
Well,
pole.
that's different. That we're getting
That's,
back to.
okay,
There you go.
okay, that's how you have both, and that's how.
Are you thinking both? Is that where you guys are kind of leaning?
Yes, I've been that way from the very get-go of this conversation. I've been waiting to fire that question out there because you haven't convinced me why we have to have one.
Well, if you want to
I'm not trying to convince
We
you.
could have two, it can be, it's just,
I'm more convinced we do both.
it's a little bit of apples and oranges a little bit. You can have two. You can have your Cadillac that is city owns, very strict criteria based on exactly what you want. Or you can have the Ameren ones that you will still pay monthly, but you're kind of getting what they're gonna give you to an extent. To an extent.
You're gonna have the
Well, you
minimum
can
luminance
set
there.
the parameter for what your expectations are from Ameren.
Well, it depends, you know, I would have to look and see, I think their post tops, I think they might even have like 70-watt post tops.
They're 100-watt LED equivalents, it's in the.
Because I know
that's
on
what-
their Cobra heads, there's a 100-watt.
Yeah, they're.
They got 100-watt and 250-watt, I think.
Right. Well, the point is that if it was me, first of all, what do they need from us? I think what you guys need from us is, do we want to establish a minimum standard, or do we want that to vary from one side of the street to another, okay? So, for example, you guys, I don't know if you have one, but you probably do, foot candle or luminosity meter, okay? You could go down Passover and say, okay, Passover's X, and oh, by the way, Mesa's Y, and your parkway is this, and maybe Dude Ranch, for example, where you guys can relate to, is this. Okay, does this make sense? You guys like this kind of lighting? You're gonna find that, you know, to your point, that Mesa Road's probably much brighter than Passover, and oh, by the way, Passover's the right standard, okay? Or the Parkway's the right standard, but we don't even understand what that is right now, okay? But if you measure it, then we can determine, and you guys could recommend, okay? You guys got guidelines around arterial streets and so on and so forth. And you may say, guess what, guys, the standards the standards at the federal level are 1/10 of what you got out there right now. Okay,
And
you're
that's the way
10
it
times
sounds.
over.
I think, Mr. Rucker, I think you do.
Yeah, and we may decide that we want to be 10 times over. Okay?
Yeah, I mean.
Because we may want our city to be bright.
Because that is a minimum guideline, there's a max and a min, because on the max side, it's blinding. So you don't want to go over that threshold. That's why they have a max in there.
So, I mean, I think that we should digest all this. My suggestion, as we move forward, is we digest all this. There's been a lot of information put out there. There's been a lot of learning. Some of us probably, you're still trying to figure out what all we talked about because it's new to you. It sure took me a long time to learn all this stuff, okay? But, one, you could go out and get us some general levels that we can make sense out of, that here's Passover, here's Mace Road, here's Nichols Road, here's the Parkway, here's Greenwood Circle that I happen to know because, you know, and this is what you got, is this what you like? And then we could go out and drive around and say, yeah, I like those. Or no, you know what, Mace is too bright, but Passover, it's a little darker, but it could be a little brighter, or we could even be less at Passover. Because I think it's gonna be very interesting to see how they measure out.
You know, another way to do
Find
it-
the Parkway may be one of the darkest ones of all the streets we've
Well,
done.
you're also gonna have to get into some of your more pure residential, which is like we talked about
Yeah,
with
exactly.
Greenwood Circle, because
Right.
that's where,
Yeah.
you know, I see, you know, future development. That it's going to be that residential kind of development. Yeah, so.
You know, another way of doing the same thing too is while you guys are out driving around, if you like a lighting level, not dislike, who cares about that? If you like a lighting level of a roadway, say, hey man, we love Passover Road's lighting level. then we could replicate that too. It's another way of doing the same thing you're saying. Just
It is. The challenge is there's different fixtures and different types of lights. So for example, I'm not sure that the lumen level or the luminosity level on Mace is that much different than Passover, but because we use the new LEDs and the way that we space them,
Right.
it seems brighter.
That would be
Because
like-
there's a different color down there.
If you
in
had
your
HDRs and LED, yeah, your CRI is 3 times difference, you know, oh, very definitely. I mean, that would be night and day.
So I think, I'm trying to answer, I think then, it sounds like we need to do a survey of streetlights for luminous level.
Okay.
Of your existing,
And we'll go from there and then we'll keep going, how's that?
Right.
Yeah.
you know,
Before we
I
make-
mean, obviously, like you said, Eric, we gave you guys a boatload of information that, you know,
Well, I think you've clarified a lot of things with us and
well,
for
we
us.
try to make, I try to make it to where, you know, I'm not electrical and talking to a bunch of electrical engineers. I just want to make it clear to where I can, you know, everyone knows what we're talking about.
Oh, I think we
I think
accomplished our
you've
goal
done a good
tonight,
job
just
of
to
that.
talk
I
about
think
it.
you've done a
Yeah,
great
you
job
did.
of that.
Just
You
to
know,
talk about it, no recommendations, no.
Right.
Two things, I mean, like you said, Aaron, you guys, you know, put your heads together and discuss it further, and like Dave said, we can come out and I can run some light levels. You know,
Let's do the lighting survey of the city, pick
You
10
know, 3 or 4
streets.
locations, and
I'm sorry I was late, and maybe you've already addressed this. Has solar lighting been discussed?
sir,
No.
Not tonight.
No.
solar, the issue with solar, sir, is eventually that does become a nightmare because you have battery backup. It's unsightly with your solar array. Your light levels during the day, if you have a tree canopy, it's great for like parks that doesn't have trees, like, you know, around your fields and stuff like that. You don't see too many, flagpoles, you'll see solar lighting on flagpoles a lot, but, you know,
There may come a day when we learn how to store power better and so forth.
True.
Much like 10 years ago, LEDs were not that favored by many people, okay? But they have developed so broadly. They've learned how to manage heat on an LED, they've learned how to
Exactly.
display it to disperse light and so forth. And they do it so much efficiently from an energy standpoint, they've become preferred. But 10 years ago, they were absolutely not preferred.
Well, even
In
light
most cases.
dispersion is critical.
Oh,
on
absolutely.
that now.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, just the energy cost alone between a high-pressure sodium and LED.
So we don't know what 10 years, 15, 20 years is going to bring down the road, but
But they could be there sometime.
Maybe do solar in 10, 15 years.
We were talking about Amaranth,
Right.
you know, the expense with them, that would eliminate that aspect of it.
Ameren will never like to hear that, but.
We don't really care.
But no, I agree, that's, you know, it's a very good question, it's just that it's not there yet because the problem is 99% of all the people want their roadway or sidewalks lit all night long.
So we need to come up with where we want the lumens, but from there, are we on the agreement that we want to be able to have 2 different systems, the Amaranth and the private?
Options, not
There's
systems.
option, 2
Right.
different options, and then they need to give us some, with that, they would give us some fixtures that are acceptable.
Mr. Rucker, we have we have a 11 by 17 sheet of all the different cities that we put different style of assemblies in. Singles, twins, teardrops, post tops, cobra heads. You know, if you could send them.
Yeah, I think that,
Just to see all the different varieties
But
that
I-
we have put in.
but I think what you probably want, since they already have them, are the ones they got, like on Mesa. I don't, here's your Pat, here's your Nichols. What's another one? Your Nichols, I don't know here, I think it's gonna look like this one, here, this one.
There's a pamphlet from Amaranth I'll send you for each of you that'll give you some guidance. Now, you don't have to use their, you know, you can go to a different manufacturer, you can buy your own, whatever the case may be, but it'll be the same decision as we go to whatever the next road is. Let's just call it industrial, okay? And let's assume that we're gonna put in, you do lighting down industrial, which probably isn't a great example because there's probably already poles down there, but just let's say they were. We could choose to go buy the one that we expect and pay for it up front and pay the $6 a month and pay $6,000 up front, or we could choose to go to the Amaranth very similar style, okay? and pay $1,000 up front and $22 a month for the next 27 years.
Well, what somebody needs to do is they need to go out and take a look at industrial and tell us what, you know, the best thing
So that's what
is
we're gonna
on
do.
that road, okay? In other words, if there's enough existing poles, which is what you're talking about, you know, then to, you know, to go that route, and then all we have to do, the poles are there, we just have to buy the fixtures, you know?
And if we have that minimum foot candle level, yeah, based on whether there's poles or not, you can, the engineer can come to what the most efficient, effective way is to light industrial.
So I think Industrial Drive's gonna be a good first one out of the gate for us. It's gonna be a real project that we can really sink our teeth into in the next 6 months, because we're gonna come back, we have street lighting in there. And I think what we should do is that we'll design it one way with city-owned, and I'm thinking Cobra top, Cobra head. I'll show you pictures. We're gonna design it that way. We're gonna bid it that way as an alternate, and then we're gonna decide if we wanna go that way or if you guys wanna go the Ameren way. That's simple.
Well, I think that if you bring it to us and make a recommendation to us as to maybe using the Cobra heads as opposed to, you know, this kind of lighting, I'm not sure this kind of lighting even makes sense on that kind of.
Sure, okay.
So just decorative.
What's gonna happen, what's gonna happen on industrial is this, is we are going to design, I'm telling you right now, I'm not doing that on industrial, I'm doing the fiberglass Cobra head, I'm gonna try to get it, we're gonna design it, and I'm gonna try to get as good a price as we can, maybe it comes in at $4,500, I don't know, $4,000 a light, whatever. And then we're gonna come in with an option to go the Ameren route, and we're gonna show you which lights we're going with, the spacing needs to be comparable to whatever lumens level we've decided. And then you guys are gonna be able to decide based on the payoff, what do you wanna do?
Okay.
It'll be that simple. And then we'll make that decision as a group on which way we go.
Right, and you are gonna consider, if there are light pole, if there are power poles there that can be utilized, you're gonna consider that or not?
That'll be the Ameren route,
Okay.
Now, you're saying, Sheriff, those are Ameren poles now?
Overhead and run poles.
What, I'd have to see what they would charge to put a Cobra head and a mast arm on that.
I'm not sure that that's in that pricing, but
Yeah,
there is, it's not too
because the
bad.
city couldn't do
It's
that.
around 11 or 12 bucks. But no
It would
upfront.
be
There would be an
cost.
upfront cost for the
Pardon me?
installation.
Pardon me?
There would be an upfront cost for them to put the mast arm and the Cobra head on.
Here, I'll tell you right now, there's not a lot of lighting on industrial, I'm looking at the picture. Okay, we'll address that issue when we get there. This'll be your first one out of the gate, where we're gonna make a decision one way or the other on which way we wanna go.
And Kevin, I think what you're talking about is, if from an option standpoint, you know, and again, getting back to that, you know, I think we kind of deviated and started talking about fixtures and whatever, but I think from an option standpoint that you're talking about is giving the developer the option of, you know, continuing to pass along to the homeowners association the opportunity to continue to pay that on a month, the electric bill for their lighting on a monthly basis, or to turn it over to the city and then have us come up with some type of a cost, you know, to do something like that, you know. That was, I think, Kevin's question.
And I want to think with,
Should we
turning it
mention
over
that?
to the city, that would have to, you know, and once again, if we ever get to that point to design for a residential area, that would include the power source and everything to where you would own that also. So that would be total package, or you would have one meter, one bill with X amount of lights on it at a specific address.
All right,
We're good.
anything else you all need from us? Anything else we need from you this evening before we call it quits? Board, do you have any questions, comments? I think it's been a very helpful meeting.
Very informative.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that.
Help us understand the need to be more clear.
Right. Well, and knowing that we're headed down the right road, but we're still not there.
No, correct.
You know, we need to deviate a little bit.
We're working on
Come
it.
up, yeah, that was the intent.
We're working on
We're
it.
getting there, but,
Right.
very definitely.
Do you
I think it
have
was a good
guy-
meeting.
Do you have, and I'm not trying to push you or, you know, force a timeline on you, but do you have any idea when you might be able to bring something back to us to take a look at?
As far as the lighting level survey,
Right, and that type of thing, right?
To be determined.
huh?
Why don't you just, you guys talk about it when
Yeah, we
you
can
guys
talk
leave.
about it.
Yeah,
And
let
shoot
us put a
something
plan
back,
together.
shoot something back to Gina,
I think-
just so we
We'll
can
put a
kind
plan
of.
together.
Once we know
Yeah.
that the weather's gonna break, I mean, it would basically take me one night to go into 2 or 3 different streets.
Right.
That's all.
Let me ask you a dumb question, really dumb one. Does it matter, we're talking tree canopy?
It does, it can make a little bit of difference.
All right, I'm just throwing
You
it
know,
out
it
there.
point,
depends
but
on where,
I think-
if your lighting is above the canopy, oh yeah.
Sure,
it's
it does,
terrible.
but you don't usually put up that high. But
Okay.
The one thing I would suggest is if any of the board members would like to see a particular road measured, please send that to Gina. Would
Yes.
that be an okay suggestion?
Yeah, yeah.
And that way, that's an easy thing for you to have perspective on. So you may end up with 6 or 8, but we're not that big a town, in 4 hours you can measure them all.
And I guarantee you, a lot of these streets down, you know, that you go down, they're gonna be different.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Just, when I come down, I'll let you.
We'll
let
check
you
all
know,
these for
so let
sure.
the police department know that I'm not.
We'll check all these for sure, because we know we got lights on these. And then I guess the other thing is whether streets you have that are lit that we're not aware of.
Yeah, that's the ones we
Yeah.
would suggest.
Right, that we didn't
Right.
see tonight.
Right,
Let
right.
us know which ones you want us to look at.
All right.
Okay.
All right, thanks, everyone, appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Encourage you.
Nice meeting you.
You bet.
Tara. Can you reuse that?